Greetings of solidarity to fellow activists and comrades. Indeed, it is an honor to participate in this important event. The situation in occupied Palestine is at a precipice, and our responsibility as the global community is to ensure that Palestinian lives and society is preserved and protected. The South African Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ms. Naledi Pandor, has made this call following the landmark judgment that was delivered by the International Court of Justice last week, Friday. After listening to state party submissions to the UN Security Council, apartheid and genocide state of Israel, together with the United States, have now become genocide denialists, making all forms of excuses and giving warped and incorrect interpretations of the obligations imposed by the Apex Court for the provisional measures it has imposed to ensure the protection and preservation of Palestinians as a society and group in the Gaza Strip. The court recognized the risk and danger of those rights being affected, which the Republic of South Africa sought protection in terms of the Genocide Convention and the link to the provisional measures sought therein. There is a high risk of these rights being vanquished, in part or as a whole, by the time the merits of South Africa's genocide case is adjudicated. Provisional measures were imposed by the court, and Israel must provide reasons within 1 month of the order to show to the court and the applicant what measures it has undertaken to prevent such imminent harm and risk to the protection of those rights. Under this backdrop, it is inexcusable and indefensible that certain states who are now also incriminated by the genocidal enabling of an ultra-right fascist regime in the supply of billions of dollars in military arms, weapons, and munitions, which have been unleashed predominantly on the civilian population in Gaza, have taken this ghastly step to suspend funding of the United Nations Relief Works Agency, UNRWA. We are aware of the important work this agency does in alleviating the suffering of Palestinians in a region devastated by war, conflict, and genocide. In March 2022, we lodged an extensive criminal complaint raising attention to terrorism and related activities that are unlawful, including a pattern of organized crime where individuals enlisted in the Israeli Defense Force and pro-Zionist institutions are currently under investigation for violating the laws of foreign military assistance, anti-terrorism, and the prevention of organized crime. The IDF's crimes also extend to the West Bank, and we have seen the surge of raids on Palestinian refugee camps and neighborhoods since October 7, including the increased detention of prisoners and child prisoners not afforded any legal representation, their ill treatment and torture facilitated by the Israeli security apparatus and the Israeli prison services. We must raise the atrocious double standards of Western countries like the United States and European states who aid and abet criminality and warmongering, and who are criminally responsible for the destruction in Gaza and the status quo of belligerent occupation, imposed apartheid policies and practices, and settler colonialism in the Palestinian territories. Our demand is an immediate ceasefire and a complete arms embargo to prevent the re-weaponization of a fascist regime that is perpetrating war crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, aggression, apartheid, and even genocide. As the international community and global conscionable citizens of the world, we must do everything in our power to hold our countries to account in ensuring the ICJ judgment is properly implemented and enforced by member states. Israeli leaders, war commanders, and foot soldiers of IDF units, including Western state leaders and governments openly enabling genocide. Our message must be clear that such criminal actions can no longer continue with impunity. I referred to Magdalena Mughrabi, the Deputy General Director at Amnesty International, when she said back in 2018, for 4 weeks, the world has watched in horror as Israeli snipers and other soldiers in full protective gear and behind the fence have attacked Palestinian protesters with lime ammunition and tear gas. Despite wide international condemnation, the Israeli army has not reversed its illegal orders to shoot unarmed protesters. She also added the international community must act concretely and stop delivery of arms and military equipment to Israel, and that inaction would continue to fuel serious human rights abuses against thousands of men, women, and children suffering the consequences of life under Israel's cruel blockade of Gaza. Israel is one of Washington's closest allies and a major buyer of US-made military equipment, but European Union nations, including France, Germany, the UK, and Italy, have licensed large volumes of military equipment for Israel. The Gaza docket, under the auspices of Operation Cast Lead in 2008-2009, which we had lodged with South African authorities regarding the conduct of the IDF, we had alerted authorities of the IDF of the use of white phosphorus, a highly incendiary substance causing burns to human skin, and the use of nail bombs and fletchets. An account by a treating doctor, Dr. Imran, says, with reference to a series of photographs for evidence, that the victims were children who are treated in Gaza. The nail bombs are used by Israeli army to penetrate the human body and evoke the maximum damage possible to the body in the course of penetrating nails. Sometimes the nails remain in the body and sometimes they exit after damage has been caused. I refer to this inhuman use of weapons after recalling an Al Jazeera report where a doctor treated casualties emanating from the blast outside the Al Ahli Arab Hospital in central Gaza, where over 500 civilians were killed. The doctor had also accounted of victims' wounds who had succumbed to the injuries, had clean limb amputations in compacted explosives of what appeared to be metal diamond blades. In a UN fact-finding mission report in the 2008-2009 Operation Cast Lead, it was said that the application and assessment of proportionality is difficult in respect of many of the events investigated by the mission, whereby the deeds by Israeli armed forces and words of military and political leaders prior to and during the operations indicate that as a whole they were premised on a deliberate policy of disproportionate force aimed not at the enemy but at the supporting infrastructure. In practice, this appears to have meant the civilian population. And the following paragraph, the timing of the first Israeli attack at 11:30 a.m. on a weekday when children were returning from school and the streets of Gaza were crowded with people going on about their daily business, appears to have been calculated to create the greatest disruption and widespread panic amongst the civilian population. The treatment of many civilians detained or even killed while trying to surrender is one manifestation of the way in which the effective rules of engagement, standard operating procedures, and instructions to the troops on the ground appear to have been framed in order to create an environment in which due regard for civilian lives and basic human dignity was replaced with disregard for basic international humanitarian law and human rights norms. Israel has intentionally and wrongfully maimed and killed thousands of Palestinians since 2008-2009. The international community is bound to the ICJ judgment. The court considers that by their very nature, some of the provisional measures sought by South Africa are aimed at preserving the plausible rights it asserts on the basis of the Genocide Convention. In the present case, namely the right of Palestinians in Gaza to be protected from acts of genocide and related prohibited activities mentioned in Article 3, and the right of South Africa to seek Israel's compliance with the latter's obligations under the Convention. Therefore, a link exists between the rights claimed by South Africa that the court has found to be plausible and some of the provisional measures requested. Israel has failed dismally in its obligations under international humanitarian law, and the countries which have paused funding must immediately reinstate their donorships to UNRWA. We must also encourage other countries, including Arab states, to advance and increase their humanitarian efforts to UNRWA, where shortfalls are experienced to alleviate the dire conditions of human suffering in Gaza. I thank you.